Your physical experience of life, whether through symptoms or life events, can offer you higher spiritual wisdom if you allow it. I want to share a recent personal story that shows how I alchemized and healed an excruciating physical pain in less than 24 hours and how it connected to a broader life struggle that I had been navigating. My intention is that through this story, you can begin to see how this process might be possible for you too, because stories are some of our greatest teachers and other people can be our most powerful mirrors. Throughout this video, I'll be highlighting key insights and moments of awareness as we walk through how I went from a 10 out of 10 worst neck pain I've ever felt to completely pain-free by the end of the day, and how my housing struggles also shifted in connection with that experience. So this is my personal story. Of course, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Not every insight or takeaway is going to apply to you or your situation, so please use your own discernment. With that, let's begin. I have my notebook off to the side here just to keep me focused and make sure that I hit on all the points. So just for some context, so if you've been following me for a little while, my past teachings have really focused on this idea that our bodies reflect and express a higher spiritual wisdom when we stop to understand things from a symbolic lens, right? So today we're going to be taking that to a whole nother level, the arena of a spiritual or metaphysical healing, okay? And I haven't really shared too much about that publicly in terms of the healings that I've experienced over the last year as I've been studying this topic deeply, but I'm really excited to finally be able to let you in on that a little bit today, and the process that I go through in order to get to the outcomes that I just described. So I'll give you a little backstory of what was going on. So as I'm filming this, it is Tuesday, and this past Saturday, I woke up in a lot of pain. I wanted to turn over in bed and I realized that I couldn't. My neck, my right side of my neck and shoulders were just screaming at me. I could not move. I couldn't sit up. It was like daggers stabbing into the side of my neck, and I could barely even take a deep breath without feeling that pain. And so my first thought was all of the things I had planned that weekend, later that day, the next day, getting together with friends and playing beach volleyball the next morning. I was in my mind already instantly clearing those things away, thinking that I had to just kind of make space for this pain. And then my second thought immediately after that was about my metaphysical training. I couldn't really focus though, because metaphysical treatment requires a lot of thinking. And so I decided to call a colleague. And I wanted to call a colleague because I knew that talking to her would help me be seen in the truth of my painless spiritual identity, and particularly important because it was a time when I could not do that for myself. Normally, if I weren't in that much pain and able to form like solid thoughts, I would have done that myself. However, this was a situation where I really couldn't have really focused enough to be able to get to where I needed to go mentally. So I'll explain everything that we talked about in this video and the healing that followed. Okay, so on the phone call, the first question that my colleague asked me was, "What has been a pain in your neck recently?" And I couldn't help but smile when she asked this question, because from my previous work, metaphysics aside, I've already been talking so much about body symbolism and how our physical pain especially is acting as a physical representation of larger issues. If you're curious about how that really works, I've broken it down inside my pain symbolism masterclass, which I'll link down below. But for this phone call, I immediately was like, yes, there is so much going on in my life right now I've been doing my best to stay calm, stay centered, stay positive about, but clearly, even though my conscious thoughts, I spent a lot of time working on not getting sucked into anxiety and worry and frustration, my patterning was still expressing in this physically painful way, and I'll share with you in a moment what it was all about. So I told my colleague that I've been having a massive housing struggle. So I've basically been bouncing around for the entire month of February. I moved into a place that was supposed to be long term on February 1st, and within 5 days of being there, I realized with all the construction happening in the house and just through the shared wall that I wasn't going to be able to stay. It was just too disruptive. A familiar pattern with construction happening in my living place, so I had to make the hard decision to leave. And I didn't have another place to go. I had all my stuff with me. Found another place, moved in less than a week ago from when I'm filming this video. 2 days into that, I discovered that there was black mold. So at that point, this day that I woke up with the pain in my neck was the day after I had made the decision that I was going to leave the second place. Had nowhere to go, didn't know what to do. All I had done was made the decision that I was going to leave. And so my colleague said, we talked about this through the lens of metaphysics for about 20 minutes. And there were 3 points in particular that really just like pierced right through the veil of symptoms and really like reminded me of what's going on at a higher level. And I'll share those with you. So the first thing she said was, you don't have to suffer through this. And to me, when I heard her say this, this was just a clear as day confirmation of an ongoing healing and pattern that I had been working on, which she didn't actually even know about. Another metaphysical concept is that we share one divine mind. And so even though I hadn't said anything to her about it, when we were working together on the same wavelength in a metaphysical way, we pick up on these things. You know, you can call it intuition. I'm just going to explain it through the lens that we were working through. We share one divine mind. And because she was helping me with the situation, she was able to, just tune right into the things that were happening with me without me even having to say it. And so it really felt like a confirmation of this theme that I had been working on for several months leading up to this incident. The theme that suffering is not a necessity of life and that life can be easier. And a few days before this, I remember I have a notes thing going on my phone, just like insights that I get from these spiritual, metaphysical healings from God, from Source Divine, whatever you want to call it. And a few days ago, I had written in there something specific about pain. And it was that pain is the internalized expression, while creativity is the externalized expression. So the divine always seeks to express itself, and as reflections of the divine, you know, we carry that same quality of wanting and seeking out constant and growing expression. And for a lot of us, myself, of course, I'm referring to myself in this example, and maybe you too, in our human life have developed some blocks or some beliefs or some patterns, whatever name you want to give that thing that prevents us and separates us from our infinitely expressive true self, spiritual true self. For whatever reason, our expression can get hindered and not make it outside of ourselves. Maybe we don't feel safe, maybe we don't, we've just never known how to or been given outlets that are healthy to get our expression out there, our needs met, to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel understood. And while we may have some like physical outlets like sports or art, or like there are different healthy creative expressions out there, but sometimes even the most creative people can still struggle and internalize a lot of their pain instead of getting it out, because there are underlying beliefs about the necessity of suffering. And so that's something that I've been personally working on as I'm sort of transitioning in my role and my purpose, realizing that healing has been such a significant part of my life and my purpose, and yet I'm also realizing that it's not everything, and that I'm also a deeply creative person, and I just want to create what I want to create, and that purpose in life doesn't always have to come with these like heavy burdens and pains, really. So that's a little backstory to what that you don't have to suffer through this line, like why it resonated with me so strongly, and maybe there's something in there for you too. And then secondly, she said, you are flexible, adaptable, and you are not stuck. All things are possible to God. keep an open mind. Her and I were talking about God as a synonym for spirit, divine, the universal principles and metaphysical principles of love and allness. So you can substitute the word God for whatever fits your belief system. And she was affirming these things for two reasons. So to first counter the stiff neck idea, she affirmed that I am flexible and that I am adaptable. And so she was using this idea that is truthful to counteract an erroneous belief about myself that I'm stuck, that I am rigid, that I am struggling to adapt to the situation. And the second reason why she said this was to acknowledge and see the truth of who I am as a reflection of divinity. I had mentioned that already, but this is one of the basic fundamental principles of metaphysical, or at least divine metaphysical healing, that healing comes from the divine, and it's not our job to do the healing, but it's actually just our job to reflect and come home to our original state and essence, which is divine. All of us are ideas of God who reflect his image and likeness. That's why these qualities must also be reflected. These qualities of flexibility, of adaptability, of freedom, not stuckness. And you can, when you're using this particular principle in your own life, you can replace those words, adjectives with whatever fits your situation in the positive, right? So we picked these words only because the thing that was presenting was trying to suggest that I was stiff and like not reflecting the divine qualities of flexibility, adaptability, and freedom. So if you like apply it to your own situation, right? Like it's very individual, and the specificity of the perspective shift is a big piece of why this healing turned out the way that it did, had the outcome that it had. You have to make it specific, and I teach this in my other course, the Intuitive Pain Healing Program too. You have to make it specific to you. Otherwise, a lot of the healing effect is lost. It's really important to pick up on what is it that the body is trying to suggest about me that's not true, that's an error. And even though it might be communicating to you something that's important, and we don't want to dismiss that and shut that down, we want to thank the body, yes, for reflecting that wisdom, and at the same time not allow it to continue to define us, because that's actually not who we are. You really want to affirm the opposite, the positive, the qualities that are present when you are being your whole and spiritual self that God divine created you to be. Okay, and the third thing that really stood out to me about our phone conversation was she said, enjoy the rest of your day, let yourself relax and feel supported. So this one, it can seem like a really simple, just kind of meaningless statement that you would just say to anybody, but it also hit for me on another practice that I've been working really hard on, which was to make space for the good, to choose and create and experience joy, peace, relaxation, even when there's evidence against it. And it's really the question of like, what are you going to identify with? Because if in your experience there is both pain and there are some pockets of joy and neutrality and even like goodness in your day, you have the choice of which one you're going to focus on. It was a huge mental exercise, has been a huge mental exercise for me over the past almost year now, to learn just how much it can impact not only your mood. This is not even just about like how you feel in the moment, but it can literally on a metaphysical level change outcomes in your life. And I have so many stories of this that I could share with you at another time, but just choosing to create and focus on joy more so than the pain is a huge game changer for anyone who is dealing with pain of any sort, whether it's physical, emotional. I had talked about in another video recently about healing heartbreak and how it's the same idea. If you allow pain to obstruct your view completely of your life and your experience, it's going to be very hard to get out of that place. And healing heartbreak, I'm just using that as an example, but this can be applied to all other types of pain. But heartbreak is one that a lot of us can relate to, right? It feels like the world is ending, like things are closing in on you sometimes because you've lost like this one source of love. But when you remember that there was love all around you, when you remember that love of all different types and forms still surround you and pour into you every moment of every day, that's when you realize like you're actually okay. You haven't really lost anything, actually, in the grand scheme of things. They say, you know, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So what happens to that love, it only gets transformed. It turns into another form. And just because that person is no longer in your life, it doesn't mean that on a spiritual level that you are separate. It just means that in this earthly, physical, human plane that you don't get to see this person physically, maybe, or be in communication with them, or even like quote unquote love them in the human way, in the human sense. But that spiritual love, divine love, still exists between you and between all of us. So that's one example. So going back to, choosing to create and experience joy, peace, and relaxation. So after the phone call, I laid there just to relax and like take all of this in, like let myself get out of that mental state where I was just like, I was giving a lot of real estate in my mind to the experience of pain. And then I sat up, and at that point the pain had gone down already about 50%. So then I spent the next hour after that looking for housing. It was a very sort of just peaceful situation. I wasn't feeling any worry. I was just like, I need to put the time in to look for something because I know that it was just logical at that point, and it didn't make me feel afraid. And after that, I went about my day trying to choose joy as much as I can, not withholding myself from experiencing my life, deciding not to clear my schedule, still going ahead and hanging out with my friends. By the end of that night, the night of the phone call, I was feeling 80% healed by the time I closed my eyes and went to bed. In the morning, I was feeling no pain. And so I was able to go play beach volleyball with just like a little bit of residual tightness, but no pain. About an hour after that, I received 2 replies for housing that was available that week. So this story I share because it's one of the more clear and also, I would say, even more extreme demonstrations of metaphysical spiritual healing that I've experienced over the past years I've been studying it. This just goes to show what can happen when you choose to take a spiritual and or metaphysical approach, because everything that's connected together heals together. So it wasn't just the physical symptom that healed in isolation. It was because I used the physical symptom as a cue to myself that there was something deeper, more spiritual going on that needed attention. And it was directly connected to this, or maybe even caused by the stress of the housing situation. They were kind of feeding into each other, I would say. And then it revealed some even deeper spiritual wisdom, right? Like the reinforcement of things I had already been learning spiritually and working on and growing through, the themes of not having to continue suffering, to keep choosing enjoyment, to just affirm the truth of who you are at the highest level that you can comprehend, and not what's immediately in front of you. Because what is immediately in front of me was pain, and that I knew from all of my training that that was not who I was. And that's what makes healing possible. We have a pure kind of reference point and template to go back to. Otherwise, healing wouldn't be possible and wouldn't exist. I wanted to share this in encouragement for any of you who might also be facing issues externally right now, whether that's in your body, whether that's in your career, in your relationships, in, any area of life really, that we can use our awareness to understand deeper what is going on. And it can also show us a lot about where our inconsistencies are with how we perceive ourselves in contrast to our true spiritual identity that is whole and peaceful and harmonious at all times, eternally, forever. So I just hope that you learned something from this video, from this story. If you see yourself reflected in something that was shared, please let me know. Let me know if you like this type of video. I have a lot more stories that I can share with you in the near future, hopefully. I also just want to say really quick that, as a maybe mini disclaimer that I have been studying the topic of healing and the interconnections between the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, energetic for quite some time now. And so, what works for me today has everything to do with where I am in my process, what's happening in my life, what I need to learn, and the same goes for you too. I really encourage you to not just take this at face value. If you feel like there is something in this video for you, like take the time to go through it and really piece together what it is that is relevant for you and for your situation, for the lessons that you are currently learning. And not only is it how you can best learn something for yourself, but also it'll give you the best results when you go to apply it, because you're not just copy pasting somebody else's solution. The more that I go through life, the more I realize that we just have to kind of find our own way through things, and we gotta come to our own understanding, work out our own salvation, as they say. Thanks for joining me today, and I will see you in the next video.